Great. Hi, I'm Robin. I recently completed an MSc in Sustainability and Adaptation at the Centre for Alternative Technology, where I use Theory U to explore issues of social equality during urban regeneration, using a case study of Govanhill in Glasgow. Yes, here's an overview of the talk. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my background, what interested me about Theory U, why I was interested in this topic, and how the event went, what the kind of outcomes were, and the kind of limitations. Okay. So this is me. So I'll talk a bit about my interest in social fields research, which stems from my involvement in climate activism, renewable energy, food and housing cooperatives over the past 10 years. Through these grassroots initiatives, I've experienced how collaborative efforts to address social and environmental justice challenges can support the co-creation of alternative operating structures. I came across Theory U during a climate innovation summer school last year called The Journey. It's organised by Climate Kick, which used collective visioning and design thinking to generate transformative project proposals. Following this, I took part in the U Lab, where I discovered the U Lab Scotland group and found out about the Firestarter Festival. So I was interested in how to address the issue of environmental gentrification. So this occurs when investment in improvements to environmental quality in historically disadvantaged areas or previously industrial areas in cities causes an influx of affluent residents. This rising demand increases property value and rent prices, displacing less affluent residents. However, these environmental improvements also improve biodiversity and the health of urban residents and reduce emissions and the impact of extreme weather events. So gentrification is a symptom of green growth, where environmental and housing improvements increase property values and tax revenues. Neoliberal green growth constructs market-based solutions to address the stigma of place, rather than addressing the income inequality and lack of affordable housing, which drives socio-spatial inequality. The literature is clear that gentrification is a symptom of neoliberal economic thought. However, there's limited evidence of efforts to transcend these economic paradigms to enable socially equitable regeneration. So Theory U aims to transcend free market economic paradigms by making the mindsets and relational dynamics which produce inequality and overconsumption visible. The U process consists of 5 stages incorporating observation, reflection and action to active listening to divergent voices at the edges of the current system to uncover an emergent common intention and realize a role in creating this vision. Sharma argues that the transition from a free market economy to a co-creative economy requires greater awareness of our values, perception of, and empathy towards others, and our role and responsibility in enabling equality of opportunity and collective socio-ecological well-being. 4D mapping uses social presencing theatre to enable groups to visualize the social field, i.e. how our behavioral attitudes collectively create our social system. So I organised an event as part of the Firestarter Festival to explore how social relations in Govanhill influence who benefits from regeneration. In Govanhill, a public petition has called for government intervention to address the deterioration of tenement buildings, which has led to investment in regeneration initiatives. Social enterprises and a new cycle path have recently appeared on the main high street. You can see in the picture here. And it is the most multicultural area in Scotland, with a historic working class community and a recent influx of more middle class residents, including myself. These qualities present an ideal case study to address complex challenges in urban transitions and racial and socioeconomic inequality in the UK. Community resistance to environmental gentrification provides an opportunity to challenge green growth to incorporate social sustainability by addressing structural and relational dimensions of inequality. To enable socially equitable regeneration, the economic paradigms of thought which produce inequality and socioeconomic vulnerability must be transformed to incorporate collective welfare. The event used social presencing theatre to create a 4D map exploring existing power relations between decision makers and impacted communities, and then shifting these relationships using mindfulness and movement to envision a future Govanhill for people from all backgrounds. The day began with some active listening exercises using I saw, I heard, I felt responses in true ULab style. One of the core social presencing theatre exercises is called the 20-minute dance. This mindfulness exercise helped to prepare individuals for the 4D map by grounding them in their felt experience. I also incorporated Joanna Macy's systems game, which was used to develop an awareness of interconnectivity and explore how group dynamics can influence social behaviour. This exercise is similar to, but shorter than, the village, which is a similar social presencing theatre exercise, which I learned on the workshop that I attended in the Netherlands with Arowana. Finally, a video explaining Theory U, the iceberg model, was screened to set the context for the social, ecological and spiritual divides which are included in the 4D map. During the lunch break, participants were invited to take an empathy walk in pairs around the local area, taking turns to comment on what they noticed. On their return, the challenges and sources of positive change identified from interviews with local community development organisations and social enterprises, which I'd conducted separately as part of my research, were shared, and participants had the opportunity to add their thoughts. So key challenges included hard to treat homes, sanitation issues, feeding, division and racism, language barriers, universal credit and poor mental health. Some sources of change included utilising local green space, locally run businesses and charity shops providing opportunities for community participation, community integration initiatives, areas of mixed tenure, and the multicultural diversity of the community. In the afternoon, participants volunteered for roles to create the 4D map. 4D mapping enabled the group to embody the roles of different actors in the system and explore how they relate to and perceive others, and identify opportunities to participate, influence, and change the system. The 4D mapping roles included a local property owner, a local councillor, a housing association worker, a private renter, a social entrepreneur who ran a local zero waste shop, a church community worker, an elderly Scots resident, a young migrant, and a representation of the earth and the system aspiration, which in this case was affordable well-being. Beginning with those most powerful, participants decided their position, proximity, orientation, level, and shape in the system to create Sculpture 1. That's on the right in this image, and made a short I feel statement from their role. Participants were encouraged to engage embodied knowledge using mindful movement to feel where their body wanted to move in relation to others, rather than deciding on a destination. When all the roles had taken position, participants had 5 minutes to shift their position in relation to each other to create Sculpture 2, which is on the left here, the collective aspiring future. Participants were instructed not to manipulate the direction of other roles, but instead to focus on their felt senses within the relational setting. Participants then reflected on the surprising and touching elements, key learnings, and potential sources of change. This is a sketch that I've done to show the movement from sculpture 1 to sculpture 2. Apologies for my drawing. So the property owner was deemed most powerful and took up a position standing on a chair in the middle of the room in the center of the circle. The housing association worker and private renter took up positions looking towards the property owner near the affordable well-being role. The church community worker situated themselves between the property owner and the elderly man who was on the ground. The zero waste food shop owner was between the 30-something private renter and the earth. The young Roma girl was on the edge of the circle between the elderly man and the councillor. As we did not have enough people to fill all the roles, the earth and the affordable well-being roles were represented by props. This meant that they couldn't move. Therefore, participants seemed to quite quickly determine that the aim of the game was to get closer to the earth, which was quite interesting. So their final positions were in a circle around the earth, indicating a shift from centralized ownership-based power with the property owner in the center to decentralized socio-ecological power. Well, that was my interpretation. The property owner commented that they felt excluded from the circle at the end and that they weren't sure if they still lived in the area. Another participant commented that when the earth and affordable well-being were positioned away from each other on opposite sides of the room, they thought, yeah, that's what we do. We say we have to treat nature this way because we want to live in nice, comfortable houses and have aspiring lifestyles, so we pit them against each other. When really you can't have one without the other. If you ask yourself what's going to make you well, you're going to go to nature. I thought that was quite an interesting reflection. Another participant articulated that the health of the social ecological system requires a shift in perception from people doing what's best for themselves to deciding what steps are best for everyone. So that's this in their own words. Another participant expressed a frustration with people centering power around the property owner and felt that noticing the interrelationship between people is much more necessary and able to change things. This acknowledgement of people's interconnected well-being is core to shifting paradigms towards a co-creative economy. These reflections were combined with data from sensing journey interviews with local community development organisations and social enterprises and used to create an emerging and aspiring future and to identify behavioural and relational shifts which could lead towards a more equitable and environmentally sustainable future. The vision incorporated a value shift from private ownership and profit to social impact and global sustainability, reflecting the relational shift represented in the 4D map and from emerging business values expressed in interviews. Affordable goods and services are provided by collaborative social entrepreneurs who pay a living wage. There is equality of opportunity in work and education where linguistic diversity is valued. Existing local initiatives and organisational aspirations showed evidence of a potential pathway towards this aspiring future. Participants mentioned events where cultural diversity is celebrated, organisations using a pay-what-you-can solidarity economy, independent businesses sharing resources, and workplaces employing local people to increase community outreach. Sensing journey interviews were also conducted, sorry, I've already said that. Data from interviews and the event informed interlinked intervention proposals at personal, relational, and structural levels. This combines the iceberg model and the social field frameworks from the Theory U. So these included influencing personal attitudes and behaviours, strengthening community cohesion, creating structures to support equitable life opportunities, and affecting the system purpose towards interconnected socio-ecological well-being. by holding spaces which support participants to approach the challenges people experience due to structural inequality with an open mind, heart, and will. Strengthening community cohesion to improve intercultural understanding and opportunities for multilingual people. Developing structures to support equality of opportunity and awareness of ecosystem limits, and utilizing the power of counterculture and social media to transform societal objectives towards interconnected socio-ecological well-being. So some of the limitations. So this study analysed how social relations influence the beneficiaries of regeneration. However, therefore, intervention proposals focus on personal and relational leverage points. However, wider structural factors influence regeneration beneficiaries. To enable transformational change at multiple scales, solution spaces should include engagement with external decision makers whose actions affect this community. The personal and relational approach outlined here doesn't imply that influencing the mindset of those impacted by structural inequality would influence their economic realities. Rather, that personal and relational processes influence the construction of the local system, social system, and that creating awareness of inequality could influence the lived realities of long-term low-income residents by increasing collaboration across social divides. Thanks. The other limitation that I thought was that I publicized the event locally on local community Facebook groups and on like in real life notice boards when we could do those kinds of things. And about a third of the participants were from the Govanhill postcode. Obviously other participants had found out about the event through the Firestarter Festival. So there was a mixture of people, but I thought that incorporating the empathy walk helped to increase, to share the experiences of people who were from the area with those who'd found out about the event through the Firestarter Festival. So does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Robin. There's a couple of questions in the chat box, actually. So I can read those out to you if you don't mind. Marie, she has a question around theory U. She says, the language of theory U can feel academic. How did you translate the language of this for the participants so that they didn't feel excluded?
The session was, the session was quite practical. I guess we included the video, Otto Scharmer's video explaining the iceberg model. And I didn't go into depth around environmental gentrification, I didn't frame that as the issue that we were looking at. I just described the local area in the way that I did to you, to set the context for the mapping activity. The activities mainly focused on like the active listening, the systems game, and then just getting participants talking to each other. So sorry, I think I've presented it in quite sort of presenting the findings of my dissertation, so it probably sounds quite academic, but that wasn't how it came across at the event, I don't think.
Oh, I'm sure it didn't. I'm not sure.
It's just a question from Caroline, which a really interesting question in your framing of the event on posters, etc. How did you do this to encourage people along?
Yeah, so with the posters, I guess I tried to kind of like pitch the vision of living in a community where we have, are paid, have jobs and are paid the living wage and have quality housing, live in warm homes, where, like I said, cultural diversity is celebrated, So to try and bring people in with the future vision.
But I was going to explain that we have to kind of finish off in a minute, but if there was any other questions, or if anybody wanted to continue chat with Robin, maybe they can let us know and we can put you in touch, because it's such an interesting piece of work that you've done, and particularly in social presencing theatre, which is quite often inaccessible to a lot of people in the ULab journey. I think it's been fantastic, to do that. So thank you so much for coming along. It's great. And I'm really sorry we've had to kind of draw your session to a bit of close, but I think it gave people a really good sense of what you did and how you did it. It's really good. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.